This next presentation. And who we have in the lineup is Sitcode. He's an Australian white hacker, which means he's one of the good guys. And I'm looking forward to what he's going to reveal in his presentation. Again, real farm hacking tips and techniques, and looking forward to this session. Take it away, Sitcode.
Yeah, so my name's Sitcode. Today I'm going to be presenting, thanks Brennan, real farm hacking tips and tricks and a demo, multiple demos actually, really. Proudly brought to you by Kane. Pretty disappointed I couldn't make it to Canada, but here it is anyway. So this talk's suitable for people who eat food or anyone who eats products or uses products derived from raw materials generated in agriculture, which in effect is actually everyone. It's a talk not to be a lecture, not to be condescending, not to feel like, you know, you're out of the loop or you're this and that. It's actually, I'm trying to provoke thoughts in you so that you can actually take away what I've done and try and implement it or get some bits out of it. And I think in the last session, there was a lot of, you know, there was a lot of discussion, like I got bits out of, you know, what other people were saying and likewise, you know what I mean? So it's always good to brainstorm or just put your ideas out there and see what other people think about them as well. It's not very technical. There are some little technical parts, but I'll try and breeze through them. And I've got a demo over the back on my couch. There's a funny little device over there, which I'll show you shortly what it is. I'm not a farmer. I'm, you know, just a regular Australian guy. I might be a hacker, but I'm not a farmer. I'm also not a massive expert. I've never owned a farm, never been in a tractor. I was in Iowa the other day and I didn't actually make it to the John Deere, I don't know what it's called, the John Deere Museum. I couldn't make it. The pavilion, that's right, the pavilion. I definitely knew I was in John Deere land as soon as I landed at the airport. It's very, yeah, it's a cool city. What am I? I'm a good faith hacker. I'm just a messenger. I'm not a threat actor from, you know, sovereign nation that's trying to take over the country and whatnot. You know, I'm just here presenting my research and trying to show the public for good cause what can be done about ag. These are all my social profiles, you know, just Sitcodes on GitHub and Twitter, LinkedIn as well. And I've got sick.codes is the website if you want to follow me. If you want to reach out, if you want to do some work with me, you can reach out at my email or just reach out on LinkedIn. I regularly do pen tests for companies, big and small, like ISO standard stuff, SOC 2, whatnot. And yeah, that's pretty much me. Quick disclaimer, I won't read it all, but no one paid me to do this research. It's all good faith as well. Doesn't represent anything about me, my employers. You know, for example, it does look like I'm throwing, you know, shade at Deere, but you'll see throughout the talk that Deere's actually changed in their way. They're actually market leader in cyber at the moment, which is quite extraordinary from the result of what actually happened from this stuff. So not under any gag orders apart from, you know, basic NDAs in some cases. You can copy the slides. Anything that's not mine doesn't belong to me, obviously. So, and I'll put the slides on my LinkedIn after this as well. So if you want to grab it from there, the pen test isn't authorized. Great, yeah. There's a bunch of my CVEs. So if you zoom in, it's quite small. But yeah, CVE, blah, 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 blah. Lots of CVEs there. Some thoughts to keep in mind when we're doing this talk. It's a big talk. But I want you to relax as well. Don't feel like you have to take notes, you know, notes. I mean, to take notes of things that change your mind. That's probably what I'd suggest. Coming to terms of risk, it's all about risk management. Ag, it's not unlike, it's a very different industry to all other industries. And I mentioned in the last session about the mining ISAC, comparing it to auto and comparing it to ag. Very, very different, but there are commonalities or common features between them all, common risk profiles, but there's also definitely, obviously, very different risk profiles. For example, also in a JCB recently, and it was a very different experience. So they do a lot of earthworks, a lot of moving, you know, construction stuff, whereas they both have tractors, but John Deere's tractors or Case IH's tractors, different purposes and different threat models, different risk models, different amounts of data, things like that. Food and ag is an industrial, it's part of industrial control systems. So ICS, it should be, it is, and then it will forever be that way because, you know, without food, we all die. So supply chain ownership, it's all about taking into account or taking accountability with respect to the fact that securing the food supply chain is quite important. As you can imagine, like I said earlier, without food, people literally start wars, you know, famines and things like that. And I think there's a joke, 3 meals away from World War III or something like that. I don't know who said that, and I don't know if it's an idiom, but I use it anyway. So right to repair is completely separate from cybersecurity, and there's a little bit of crossover, but there's a lot of dissimilar factors as well, and that kind of gets confusing, especially while I was doing this research as well. A lot of things came up, and especially yesterday, I think I saw the MOU yesterday with Deere and the Farm Bureau, and I think I mentioned it later on in the talk. But that was an interesting document that came out yesterday. So they outlined and talk issues, and I think as Ritesh was saying before, confidentiality, integrity, availability, the big three things in cyber really: hacking, hardware, and then the jailbreak. And I've got a demo behind me as well, the famous demo as well. So I'm going to talk a few things about current issues right now to bring you up to speed, because everyone's on a level playing field. So ag is actually the first step of this food supply chain. This is like literally the first thing that comes up when you Google food supply chain or food supply or supply chain management, whatever. But if you look at the image, you've got a tractor and corn. Corn's ethanol, biofuel, you know, a lot of different things are actually in a direct, you know, meat comes from, you know, grain fed, and it just goes on and on and on. Alcohol, obviously food, and other raw materials, you know, like it just never ends. Big issues though with that, obviously. The risk profile can be, well, the effect of incidents in this sort of sector, albeit all ICS, have quite substantial impact on the daily lives of people all around the world. For example, the Colonial Pipeline attack, which happened around about the start of when I was actually hacking John Deere the first time. Subsequently was JBS. They were actually hacked while we were doing our research as well. And that one's a little bit different. It's a little bit of a sus industry, JBS, without prejudice, I guess. There's something there that doesn't really make sense. And that's something that I'm not going to really comment on, other than that it's a little bit different to what it looks. Russian hackers targeted an Iowa grain co-op, and you can see in that little sentence there, cybercrime cell XYZ threatened to release the co-op's business data unless it paid up. So it wasn't necessarily typical ransomware where you freeze the files, blah blah blah, but it was all about publishing the data. They paid $5 million to protect the data, according to the headline. Obviously, we don't have the internal memoirs of what actually happened there. So AGCO as well also got you know, thrashed. They got fully ransomware. You know, the factory had to shut down, and subsequently they actually paid the ransom. So you know, they got the FBI in. They had all sorts of different firms in there. They had ambulance chases. This is the one, cyber ambulance chases. When they have a ransomware event, it's in the news. All the vendors that do ransomware recovery, they just dial in. They're like leads, you know, like affiliate. Oh, it's painful. So, you know, like it's a really weird industry, and it's an industry because it's a black market. It's terrible, but it's not going anywhere, unfortunately. So recently, there's been a precision ag task force going on at the FCC. The difference between this is actually more based on radio signals, strength, you know, like connectivity, being able to connect properly, rather than actually full-blown cyber. And they've got crossovers, obviously. And actually, if you want to watch some of it, they go for hours and hours and hours. I've watched a few of them. They're pretty ordinary to watch. Obviously, there's substance to them, and I've been trying to get in contact with them. None of them replied. So the whole task force, I've sent them emails and stuff. And anyway, so then it comes to one of my stories. So this is me. I actually jailbroke the John Deere tractor. I've got it behind me, and I'll show you a demo at the end of the talk. Yeah, it was all over the news. Next big jailbreak. Oh dear, farm hardware jailbroken. And that was me. And that's me at DEF CON in September last year. I was about to say this year. So if you just Google sick codes on YouTube, you'll see the video. It's got like 60,000 views. And this is like a modified up-to-date version of that talk in terms of post effects, if that makes sense. So what did I show from jailbreaking a John Deere tractor? So as in the word jailbreak, to seriously break out of a jail, that's all it means, breaking out of the jail. And the John Deere jail, I would assume, and I'll demonstrate shortly, is the software locks that have been put in place for whatever reason. It may be emissions, it may be protect safety, but it also might be other business decisions that, say, for example, myself, I don't have a farm. So, for me, business decisions that John Deere might make might not affect my decision to want to play video games on my device. So basically the confidentiality is a bit subjective, and I would say the availability, obviously, if a threat actor was doing it, it would be nuked and you wouldn't be able to use the device. So this is a little bit skewed. It's a little bit forgiving, I guess, too much. But yeah, integrity probably very high. The fact that I can access the device fully unencrypted, download all of the coordinate stuff and all this data that's on the thing, it stores there forever. That seems to be something that of concern. For example, being able to revive a stolen tractor. A tractor stolen, with a PIN code, and I can just go in and unlock it because I know how to get the PIN code. So, or for example, you can go on eBay and buy people's PIN codes. I'll skip over these incidents, but this is sort of the price that people are paying for these incidents. So $5 million for Colonial Pipeline, and this is with the FBI, Department of Transport, and a whole bunch of DHS and all these people involved, and they're still paying bounties. And just think about that, like FBI is involved, CIA is involved, all these different organizations are involved, and they're still paying the bounty. It kind of says something if you think about it. Again, with JBS, they were off for 9 days, excuse me. As I said earlier, JBS has a little bit of a different story to it. They've got this sort of corruption accusation in Australia. Apparently it's worldwide, but it's something to think about. AGCO also ransomware, like I said, trade secrets theft of. And then, yeah, one of the statements on there was the length, remediation, and recovery is unknown because you don't know what the attackers have actually done with the data that they stole. They stole everything from AGCO. AGCO being Case, Massey Ferguson, Fendt, Challenger, not Case is their own. And this is a quote that I like to bring up as well. Manufacturers need to get lucky every day, preventing people from accessing or doing certain things on the devices they don't want to do, but a hacker only needs to get lucky once. And what I'm going to do now is actually refer to some recent news that just came out from a fellow researcher, Sam Curry. So he was doing research in July, pre-DEF CON, but also under the NDA of John Deere. But they also hacked John Deere on their private bug bounty program. 100 vulnerabilities, 50 criticals, 32 highs, 14 mediums, and 4 lows. Sam, and so we previously hacked John Deere about 2 years ago before they had a proper Okta web paywall stuff on their website with all the single sign-on SAML stuff. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's the global login, like same as Active Directory. If you don't know what that is, I don't think even Microsoft in some cases does. Throughout the service, yeah, most impactful was getting John Deere's single sign-on stuff. So getting the single sign-on will allow you to go into people's accounts that are connected to their tractors remotely and actually access the tractors remotely. So if you think about it, you've got this single point of failure up in the cloud where certain measures weren't being implemented, where all it takes is one silly mistake, as I said earlier, one tiny little lucky break, and they can access every single internet connected tractor on Earth simultaneously. Whether it's destroy them, publish a malicious update that just absolutely destroys the device, totally possible. Or wants to install video games on everyone's devices, which would be an absurd outcome. But yeah, so another one, they got into the Office 365, GitHub account, ServiceNow, AWS account. Like, it's actually quite ridiculous. But in actual fact, as I was saying, as we previously hacked them, they've actually taken a lot of ownership on this front, and they're actually market leader in cyber at the moment. So I have some slides on that shortly, I think. And as I was just saying, an attacker could take over a victim's account or simultaneously every victim, if they weren't watching 24/7, and compromise the apps. So this is what the app looks like. For example, this is my account. You can see it says "High Sick" at the top. And then, yeah, let me just turn off this notification button on my phone. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so that's my tractor. It's not actually my tractor. I think it's someone else's. And there's a button in there that you won't be able to see, but it's actually called Smart Grade Remote Support. Now, I can imagine in infinite wisdom what that probably allows you to do, but it's remote access to the device. Unless it's under another one. I think it was under display server or something like that. John Deere's probably going to correct me on it after this, but that's okay. And they're actually watching in the office right now. Hi, John Deere. Yeah, so I think I haven't seen this before. It must be new. But in all of those things that happened to John Deere and all the research that I produced on them, they actually did improve their security posture. No pain, no gain. That's Yoda as a Hulk. I don't know. It looks. Well, I don't know who did it, but it's a pretty good design. So subsequently, Deere started focusing on cyber a lot. So if you go to the site, go to Google, type in site Deere cyber. We've got seeking the next generation of cyber talent, securing our products, cyber fierce protectors, digital. These pages were all created subsequently after, coincidentally as well. I'm not going to say that I caused it, but I did rush a few things for them, including the bug bounty. I was the first person in the program, and no one can take that away from me ever. So yeah, if you look at the third one there, it says John Deere Cybersecurity Defense Center is 24 hours a day, 365. I don't know if that's people, but it could be bots and stuff. But that's exciting, seeing John Deere mature as an entity, taking the responsibility, understanding the threat, understanding how important it is. And they know this now. They know this, of course. How important it is brand as well, brand image, PR. Like customer trust, having all those things aligned, it's so important to just take ownership at some stage and go, look, yeah, we may have had a, not the best cyber when we started a year ago, but neither did Equifax or neither did Microsoft. Like everyone's been, or certain governments, everyone gets hacked. And then that's usually the catalyst to getting ahead is you get hacked yourself. So this is, I don't think I met this Jason Benke. I think it was Jason. I don't know. But yeah, Jason, they've got this cool story here, really cool story. One of my favorite blokes at John Deere, Carl, great, good fella. Met him in person multiple times now. He heads up the business information security. He's the BISO, I think it is the BISO. But yeah, really nice guy. At the start, we had, we were butting heads about what the proper procedure is, but he's all ears now, and I'm pretty cool about that. So they've even started the Cyber Tractor Challenge, which is it's like the car hacking challenge. I can't remember what it's called, Cyber Truck Challenge. Basically, they get a lot of people in one room and they just hack the tractors on certain time limits or whatever. I was hacking it in my own time, so I think it was a students only event as well, but that's okay. So they're just laying out the articles. The thing that pisses me off about this, the thing that annoys me about these is articles without the dates on them. This is one of them. Bug bounty program, brand new. This is only August 2021, and I hacked them in June or something like that. I can't remember. They'll correct me after this, but it was earlier in the year. And then I was the first person in this program. It's had 0 when I joined. They're even doing stuff at HackerOne now. This is all subsequently from pushing the button, if that makes sense. Doing stuff to John Deere that they probably didn't like at the time, which is like publicly talking about them kind of like this. But, they're hiring security staff, they're hiring this, they're hiring that. And I want to get into what caused all this cool stuff to happen. It was me. So, some of it was me. I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. I just looked at the slide and said hacking. Hacking, that's Jeff Goldblum in the Jurassic Park movie when they're talking about the frogs or whatever it is, the frog DNA in the dinosaurs, and they say, they have the same sex, but they ended up duplicating themselves anyway. And that's kind of like me. Just put something online and it'll get hacked. So, this is one other thing I just wanted to mention. Actually, I'm just going to skip over it. It's not that exciting, but it's basically the stuff that came out yesterday about the MOU and the site, the Farm Bureau. I thought it was quite interesting. The whole MOU is actually online, but just number 4 was quite funny, I thought, because I thought it was a direct stab at myself. It says, assure the intellectual property of a manufacturer is fully protected from illegal infringement through the modification of embedded software. And I'm like thinking about this. This is my illegally embedded software modified version of the John Deere display. And I'll show you in a minute what that looks like. So yeah, apparently that's illegal. So yeah, I should be in cuffs, right? It's not, obviously. So once the device leaves the factory floor at the John Deere factory or whatever factory, the Case factory, New Holland factory, or Topcon or Trimble, or any other Android developer or whatever, the device, if it emits radio, goes through the FCC, gets a filing. You've got to put up internal photos on the internet publicly. You've got to put, and that actually gives away software hints. So I actually look online at the FCC filings for products before I buy them. And I will show you one. Let me just show you what I actually have. Actually, let me just see if I stop sharing my screen. That is a John Deere telematics gateway right there. Let me just see how it looks like there. See there. It's heavily modified, as you can see. It's got its own little tail on it. I've actually added some custom software to it. Sorry, I'm looking at myself backwards. And that's the back of it. I've made an absolute mess out of this. It's, can't really go back in the tractor anymore. But it's cool to see how it works. Take stuff off, put back on, hack the daylights out of it, and then end up getting a heavily modified version. Let me just share my screen and present it. Pull back. Yeah, cool. So I actually looked at those internal photos before I bought the device, and I've got 4 of those now, which is funny because I've got 4 different generations of them. And what I like to do is actually compare the generations. So I take the board apart, take off the memory chip, just like any other software or hardware, just take out the hard drive, look at it, study it, compare it with other versions of the software. Because I've got 4 of them, I can easily compare them. So I look for clues, I look for style changes, comment changes, things like to-do lists in the middle of the code, vocabulary changes, the style that they code in, and use that to sort of base my trajectory of what I'll do. So all these things combine, like I said earlier, the FCC filings, you go on there, search Trimble, you'll get all the Trimble products. And if anyone's unfamiliar with Trimble, Trimble's a major GPS device looking thing. They publish all sorts of different things, including agricultural devices, specifically the GFX 750. I think it's a really expensive one. I haven't bought one, but they actually give you the source code anyway for free on their FTP server. So so I don't really need one really. I've got a Raspberry Pi to run that on. So yeah, that's an example of internal photos. So you get a good look at what's going on inside first. There's nothing wrong with all this. It's just that it does help people like me who want to violate the integrity of a device for specific purposes in magnificent ways. I don't have to buy it. If I wanted to look at like an aircraft Wi-Fi system, I don't have to ride on the aircraft and have a look at it first. So just in reference to that, a lot of people actually scrub their chips, or they cover stuff in all sorts of different tricks to get around it. But just be careful of what you publish in those docs. And a lot of companies now are actually doing a lot of redactions, or I think there's like a clause where you can do business secrets, but whatever it is, you still have to have internal photos as far as I'm aware. And also don't worry about people like me. I'm just a relatively regular person, knock on wood, who likes having fun with hardware hacking. So I'm not the bad guy though. There's people out there who want to do this for certain nefarious or malevolent purposes. And just on that, so once it leaves the factory, so once I get hands on the device, I want to get that code off the device and start looking at it in software that can turn it back into source code. So certain years ago, software wasn't necessarily able to be reversed properly. And now we have such good compilers and deobfuscation tools that you can turn flat out fully compiled software back into pretty much source code. And in fact, recently with tools like Ghidra, it's a free tool, by the way, released by the NSA, used by tons of people around the world, open source. And that's me looking at AgLeader. That's just me loading up the entire AgLeader software that I've got, going through it, I think this is DR, but I'll skip over this one. But I will mention, please don't crash. What happened there? Oh, there's like there's a GIF. Oh, give me a sec. There's a GIF that's really heavy and my computer doesn't like GIFs for some stupid reason. Let me just get rid of that picture. Okay, fixed. Yep. Sorry about that. Slideshow. In 2 seconds, start the current slide and just go. And I'll check the chat. Who said something in the chat? All right, back up. And where's the chat going? Chat. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so just back to that, the GIF's gone. So people have actually added AI to Ghidra now. So they're able to go in there and say, look, put the OpenAI API key in, that's what the GIF was going to show. And there's actually OpenGPT for Ghidra. So they'll just chuck it in there and go, explain to me what this does. Rename all of the functions that look weird. Explain it in, don't even explain it, just fix it. And then AI will just do it. It'll be like, oh, I can see you're trying to mathematically convert blah, 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 to blah, 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 and multiply this by that, et cetera, et cetera. Let's do it this way. And it just knows and just rewrites it. So you can do some pretty nefarious things with AI these days. Like, for example, code like that, it's just some arbitrary code, all these unnamed variables, but it's JD Core. This is John Deere, by the way. You know, I could feed that to AI and just say, rename it, fix it up for me. And then I've got source code. I've literally got source code. These tools weren't really as sophisticated as they are 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It's just something to be wary about, or be aware that people are going to do this kind of thing to hardware. Yeah, even if it's not clear code, you sort of get the gist of it by reverse engineering it. And even if it's not for the sole purpose of reversing it into flat out source code, you're still able to gain some sort of idea about what's going on. Or be able to put myself in the original developer's shoes. For example, just looking at like random stuff like this, command timeout, you know, it's probably some sort of command timeout. There's probably a race condition there that I can exploit. That's a really bad example of a library because it's a pretty ordinary library, but there are much far more exciting libraries in the John Deere hardware that I'll get into. But the interest of public safety, I don't really disclose the ones that I'm looking at unless I report it to Deere first, because it's kind of responsible to do that rather than expose the food supply chain to kind of big issues. Trimble's another one example. So Trimble, you can just go in there and download all this software just willy-nilly. It's sitting up there online. You know, some of these files like from 2011 and stuff. So can anyone do this sort of extreme stuff? And the answer is yes. Anyone can rent seriously sophisticated compute servers now. In fact, so sophisticated that the NVIDIA A100s are actually banned for export to Southeast Asia, specifically China. So the A1, I even asked Vultr, get this right. So Vultr is an American company. I actually asked Vultr at a conference recently because I went to not a cyber conference, but a web one. I said, are you guys offering the A100s? And they are. And I asked them about China, and I don't think they understood that they're not allowed to, maybe they're renting it and it's legal, but having access to it is not. So they're so powerful that the US wants to sort of slow down the proliferation. As you can see with all of the AI changes and stuff that's happening recently, they want to slow down the proliferation just a little bit so they can sort of get control over it. This was me hacking the John Deere software. So this is the issue that's going on in ag. The telematics gateway, which is the bottom right, the silver thing, that's the board that I showed you earlier, the big square. That's without the aluminium or cast iron, whatever the heck it is. That actually does a lot of the control now. In fact, it has so much control that if I was to hack into one of those devices on a real device, I could turn the tractor off, run it around. I can do whatever I want. I can lock the doors, which is pretty arbitrary stuff. But you can do more nefarious things like, you know, over time, steal all the data, you know, destroy the engine, run it hot, and make the, you know, burst the bloody gasket or something, gasket. Sorry. Yeah. it's this thing's they're extremely difficult to pull apart. I cut myself multiple times being apart and beyond repair once you break it. But the gateway has significant control over the devices, like I mentioned. They're not actually hacked into the gateway. Like I showed you 2 seconds ago with that floppy code, that ribbon cable hanging off it. But there is risks involved with these devices. These are the only network connected. These are new things, by the way. The only network connected part in the tractor. Now, compromising this allows you to theoretically perform malicious updates if you had the signing keys. Do remote diagnostics, remote display, which then you can further do all sorts of things. You can modify the activations, which is business risk, prevent data syncing or sync weird data. You can do all sorts of dangerous things. Unsigned updates, malicious updates, like I mentioned. But hacking this vector affects the whole tractor, and the same way as hacking the other parts of the tractor. Likewise, it's kind of like this big circle now. It's kind of getting a bit murky. Before it's like, I don't know what it was like before actually, but I do know that tractors weren't online before. It's pretty critical. This part is probably the most critical part of the device, I think, in my opinion. Not from a business perspective, but more so from a security perspective. The display, definitely more business perspective, because John Deere, obviously, their display is their pride and joy. But yeah, so another thing that's come up recently, like I showed you earlier with the hacking of the portal, the online system, is you can access every device, like every single device, if they're all connected. And you can imagine the damage that can be done from that. So that's my jailbroken display, and I'll show you in a bit. It's not just affecting John Deere though. So we've got Trimble, Topcon, and the way that we get in, I'll get into this shortly, but what we got here, just JD. Yeah, there's another example of jailbreaking a tractor. This one's just a Windows CE one. He's playing Jets Grand Theft Auto San Andreas on a, I think it's a Topcon, I can't remember. But this one apparently was pretty easy to modify because it just had a compact flash card, and you could just edit the flash card and put it back in. And that's kind of what I did to John Deere. They might say that I'm doing sophisticated access, but I'm effectively doing exactly what that is, taking out a disk drive and then putting it back in. That's all I did. And that's what a compact flash card looks like. They technically are older things, but they're still in use. And in fact, the industry relies on things like this. Some industry partners are turning towards Android, which has its own inherent problems, obviously. Android is not necessarily, I mean, you may hear as well, everyone knows Android gets a lot of vulnerabilities coming through. They're a popular system. Sorry, there's tons of phones, tons of OEMs, and security is a bit of wishy-washy that from my perspective. Another example of Fiat Chrysler just went to Android from BlackBerry QNX. I think another couple of systems have gone to QNX. I know QNX or QNX, BlackBerry's OS as opposed to Linux or BSD. Trimble's Android. Some other ones are going to Android. QNX as well, like I just mentioned, proprietary BlackBerry systems, very popular in defense. So is Wind River, which John Deere runs as well. Some of the problems you can have with Android is debugging bridges and things like that. And in fact, I'll show you an example in the John Deere. So in TCL TVs, I actually provided a pretty sophisticated bug in an Android TV that allowed me to see the file system on the TV remotely over the air. And they actually had a Homeland Security did a thing about it. Chad Wolf actually did a full-blown talk about it. So I was pretty chuffed. So yeah, this is me jailbreaking the thing, jailbreaking the John Deere. I hacked Deere only because it was kind of exciting. I don't know if you can tell I'm pretty excited. These have all been rooted. There's only 4 major devices. The 4240 is the one I've got, and it should be in the middle of the last 2. It's actually it's the flagship model. So I dissed all the other devices. I don't need to hack those. This one's pretty old. It still works in new tractors. Still in use from the early 2000s. Then we had the 1800. Very rare. This one is relatively uncommon. It's running Windows CE. Yeah, Windows CE. So that one's rooted. As you can see, you can run anything on that now. 2600 was another one. It was, I don't know what year it is, but I do know, oh, there it is, 2005. 2005. So this one was coming with debug symbols. VxWorks, another Wind River system. Like I said, came with debugging. And by the way, the problem with debugging symbols is it gives people information about stuff that probably shouldn't be in production. Whether or not that's a plus or a negative is up to the, I guess, the customer relatively. 2600, that's the workhorse. 2630 is the workhorse of the industry. This is the big one in the US. It's the independent farmers one. You know, that maybe they don't want to spend 10 grand on another one, even though these cost 10 grand anyway. They don't want to spend massive amounts of money on other devices, but they'll get these ones instead. It's like the previous fleet of devices, and there's problems with that because like it's an older device. In fact, it's end of life. We'll get to that shortly, but it's just like it's a cycle. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just about managing the risk. It's got network connectivity, as I mentioned. End of life as of February last year, which is problematic. As you can imagine, no updates, no changes are going to be made to that system. However, it literally runs the food supply chain. They go for about 8 grand still, but they're literally required if we are to continue eating. So Windows CE, Win CE is end of life, like I just mentioned. Zero support from the OEM. We get no updates to it, but have to understand that that's okay as long as we're managing the risk to do with that. So you literally cannot just remove them all. It would just be destructive as anything. And so where do you go from there? Do you upgrade the device to new hardware and throw the old one out, even though it still works? It's just a little bit vulnerable. Do you jailbreak it and fix the stuff yourself? Do you run vulnerable software and accept the risk? Or, in my case, I decided to jailbreak the device. Another example of undeprecating stuff, like past its end of life, and I think we talked about this in the previous one, was Starfire ITC. This device actually was running, I think it was WAS, someone will correct me, but WAS signal, and someone built a extender for it that will trick it to think that it's still running the new signal and it works again, like unbricks it. Interesting, right? But kind of essential. You know, we need farmers to be able to sometimes get around things like this. And in my opinion, you know, it's debatable. I'd say that's probably the best way to put it. Another example, open source versions of that thing that I just showed you. You can install it on your own little Teensy board. I'll skip over this code, but it says, basically it's telling it that it's trying to pretend to the device that it's running the new WAS signal as opposed to 3D plus. I'm not a signals officer or anything like that, so I don't even know what the difference between wide area or something network and 3D plus is, but I'm sure there's someone who's listening does. Is that illegal? You know, is modifying that stuff illegal? Probably not. You know, is it dangerous? Probably. You know, violates probably emission laws and things like that. But you know, I'm in Thailand, for example. Like, who's going to stop me from jailbreaking it? So anyway, I went ahead with it. That's the John Deere flagship display. That's my one, covered in thumbprints, but they're not my thumbprints, funnily enough. It's actually from the previous owner. In the top right-hand corner, there's like a really pushed-in button because the guy's been banging it. I guess in frustration, maybe. That one's expensive. I chose that because it's going to be the second-hand fleet surplus coming down soon, if that makes sense. And that's something that's unique about ag, is that, you know, big farming operations, you know, with big areas or you know, big fleets, they tend to buy brand new stuff, lease, whatever. They get the huge equipment and then send it to auctions later on. And then, you know, independent farmers will go to auctions, they'll purchase stuff. And they usually, like I said, buy stuff that's second generation in terms of use or just out of warranty. And the problem with that is the software may be like already out of date. It's something to think about, you know, like I showed you earlier, 2630, you know, they're only like, what, I don't know, 8 years old, as opposed from the first fleet from commercial farming, both of them are commercial, but like family owned businesses. It's a complex business. It's a complex issue that, you know, I don't profess to be an expert on it, but I do know that there's issues with it. That's just the way that I approach it. And I think part of the thing with that is that, farmers prefer stuff that just works. The worst thing that can happen is downtime during very important parts of the season, because that pretty much just negates everything that's ever been done. If you buy a new tractor or a new combine and it doesn't work when it's supposed to, and the previous one was working fine, then what in the world would be the point of upgrading? Hence, some blokes still use the brown box, which is the one from the early 2000s. Lots of different protocols on the John Deere stuff, but importantly, it runs Wind River Linux, which is actually an open source operating system. It's actually a operating system found in all sorts of different, very important devices, including Mars rovers, Sentinel missiles, Stinger missiles, all sorts of cool stuff. Fighter jets, and I think I saw this other day. DARPA had I think this is HIMARS, the Lockheed Martin's 32-bit microcontroller stuff. They're doing a bug bounty. DARPA, very important bug bounty, obviously, because this stuff is inside of mission critical products, as is Wind River. So yeah, something to think about there. So you can play with the Deere stuff online, and I actually did have a crack at playing with it online before I attempted to jailbreak the one that I've got. Didn't really get anywhere until I just got my own one. That's the one I've got there. It's not my farm. Some bloke in Italy, he left his data on the device when he sold it to me. So I just logged on and took all his thing. I took all his data. I didn't have to set up any farming or anything like that because his stuff's in there. He's got 446 hectares, I think. Opening up, that's what it looks like. Just a resin or clear coat, something or other. So what I did was in the bottom right corner, you'll see a little black square, rectangular. It's a rectangle, sorry. In the bottom right is a rectangle. That's what I popped off and modified it, put it back. It's a Continental PCB. Yeah, what I wanted to hack at the start was this HS AutoLink, proprietary Molex stuff. Couldn't actually, couldn't get around to it really, to be honest. I just went in the dirty way, just attacked it from the memory chip in with memory, the solid state. This pinout was part of their documentation, and it was actually incorrect. There was 2 pins, I think, missing. Where are the 2 pins? So I was just hooking up pins because I wanted to turn it on because I don't have a tractor to turn this thing on. So 2 of the pins there, 2021, undocumented, but they were actually RS-232. So I was able to access the device like that and then get a serial console. And I mean, it's just typical RS-232, but yeah. So I had problems with my device. I was unable to update it because I turned it off too many times. And they have this feature in the device where if you turn it on, turn it off too many times, it goes into system recovery mode and you have to go to a dealer to get it fixed. And I don't have a dealer in Thailand, right? So it became problematic. So I pulled it off and it said the boot count was at 6 or 10 or something. And it was causing major problems. So I had to get this little thing off with a hot air gun. Took it off. This socket didn't exist in the 2018 when the boards were kind of coming out. These are like, these are only a couple of years old now, these sockets, special sockets. In fact, there's a whole plethora of devices you can get to hack them now that weren't available during time of production. And that's something to think about when products that you produce today, whether or not you can foresee that people will go build sophisticated tools. And some of the tools coming out shortly are micro soldering, micro stuff, lasers and things. People are putting like specific silly little fuses in their chips that they think that people can't fix or bypass. We've got all sorts of tools at the moment, like people using the voltage glitching, a plethora of even EMF, like short EMF bursts to like disrupt the system, and then it jolts back in and skips lines of code. Crazy. Some other advanced hacking tools, I wouldn't say advanced really, but probably advanced when they built them. But yeah, very, very professional tools, very, very useful for hacking that didn't exist in the time. So when we pull it off, got these little solder balls there. That's under a microscope, very, very small. You got to put under a stencil. It is a pain in the, it's a pain to produce this stuff. It's fun to do, but yeah. So I was trying to figure out how to get it out of this silly recovery mode. So jump in the manual, it goes, you got to go to your dealer. Please contact your dealer. Well, I was living in Thailand, and the nearest dealer was, I think, 14 hours away, somewhere like he was in like Bangkok or something like that. I don't think it was an official dealer. So I took it into my own hands. And I'm like, look at me, I'm the dealer now. So I went and downloaded the John Deere official public software off their public software manager, which downloads around 20 gigs of software. And the software that it downloads actually allows you to pretty much build your own gear because of the amount of software it downloads. But that's okay. I mean, that's okay. That's part of their business model of being able to provide updates to a repo. It's just that I can access it as well. And that's okay as well because it's open source. But there's sort of an issue with that statement that I showed you earlier about being, violent bloody infringement. So yeah, I had this problem. How do I get this thing back online? So I go in there, I'm looking at this John Deere bootable flag. It's probably related to fixing it. This is arbitrary to me. It's probably arbitrary to you, I assume, except for the staff from Deere that are watching. Again, I didn't know what that tag did, but I whacked it on a USB stick. And what actually ended up working was a text file named dealerauth.txt. And it actually bypassed it. I'll show you how. So I was getting all these errors, 1.0, 1.1 recovery, 1.2, 3.1, all this random stuff. Got into a boot loop. To escape the loop, I deleted the other stuff that I put in there, and I was able to pretend to the John Deere device that I was in fact the dealer, and it started to fix itself, which didn't really require that much effort because it automatically did it. So that was my John Deere dealer auth bypass. It's not necessarily a bypass because that's actually the way they intended to do it. Just funny to publish it because like that was like a secret, to put the dealer auth in there. I'm sure it's changed. It might be changed by now, but they actually said, I think Carl said in the day, he's like, have you updated? You got the latest version yet? I said, I'm not putting my device online ever. I don't want you to know where I am. I don't really care if they know where I am, but a little bit. So yeah, bypass that page. Got it to update itself. I'm repairing the device. I'll fix the device. Now I can access it again. Yeah, and also it sent back a ton of logs. And me being the inquisitive brain and understanding what these logs say or reference, I was able to go in there and use those logs to actually produce meaningful information. Like think about paper shredders, right? High security environment, paper shredders. Like, why do we shred paper? Think about that. And then think about the logs, the amount of data that's in the logs. Something to think about. To someone that can read them, right? Someone that can interpret the logs. It may look a little bit sus, but to someone that can interpret them, it's a gold mine. Had some problems getting stuff to boot again. I was performing literal surgery on the device. It became risky after a while because taking that chip off the board started to get problematic. It was hot. Maybe ask if anyone has a question. I've only got about 10 more slides left. I'll just boost through. And we got, yep, that was a failed attempt, another failed attempt. I ended up needing this device, bottom left. Failed root count thing. There we go. Yeah, secondhand chips available on AliExpress. You can buy literal chips chopped out of boards. Think about that, and then think about the amount of data from somebody's mobile that they've pushed back, and like you could probably hack someone's Google account from these things. It's a bit ridiculous, but yeah, I ended up needing some of these because they're out of production. So this is pretty much pretty close to the end. So with the failed attempt there, and that was when I thought I'd screwed it up completely, but then something magical happened and a terminal popped up. And that's because I added some code in there to make a terminal pop up. And chroot, I'll skip over this. The key to getting in was jailbreaking using chroot because, well, it wasn't the key to jailbreaking, sorry. It was the key to running a certain program, which I'll show you in a moment. I was also able to get the PIN numbers to be able to restore a stolen tractor, 11111, just sitting there in plain text, whatever. I'm able to edit the serial number of a tractor now, which, I can pretend attractors, or not tractor. I can do it for all devices, but I was able to edit this little small chip, really rudimentary, by doing that. In fact, there's a way better way of doing it, using one of these SOIC clamps. A few more slides, but yeah, I was able to pump in through that. Just get in there, just read the starter out. Very crude way of doing it, as you can imagine. But in effect, I was able to do some substantial stuff. I was able to get in there, pop a root terminal, modify the official John Deere operating system, and get the terminal to pop up. So that's the John Deere terminal, and I'm going to show you a demo in that in a second, and then we'll have a couple of questions. These tools, another example, pretty good, but not quite the right tool. What other programs on there? I was kind of delving in, trying to figure out what I can get out of the device. Ability to dump the CAN messages on the CAN bus. Ability to send CAN messages to the engine to say to do things, change speed, change direction, change whatever. Squirt water out of the roof. I don't know. Dump the auger on the middle of the concrete. There's no concrete, but yeah, lots of different things. By the way, my farming experience comes from Farming Simulator. That's where I've got my profession from. So this is the jailbreak, and I'll show you the demo. Let's show you the demo. Give me a second. I'll just stop sharing my screen. Exit. Let's have a look. Can you see? You should be able to see me. Let me just quickly show my video for 2 seconds give me 2 seconds, and I'm going to set up put my keyboard from my PC into the John Deere video. We'll be back in about a second. Start the video and spin the camera around. Just plug the keyboard in. So you're looking at that's a John Deere. That's a John Deere official 4240, and I've got a keyboard attached to it. Flagship model. And it's about to run a specific program that you may have seen before, called Doom 2, running on a John Deere. Doom 2. So this is actually a special version of Doom. It's actually got a tractor in it, a fully modified version of Doom. That's John Deere, by the way. So yeah, it's got a little greenhouse. This was probably the icing on the cake. If you pick up the health, the corn gives you a health bonus. I think that's wheat, actually. And then there's something other over there, but yeah, pretty cool level. This one gives you armor. And where's the pinkies at? Where's the little? Oh, there he is. So there's little pigs on the farm, and the typical Doom fashions. You can run them over and stuff. But yeah, give me a tick, and I'll just stop the video and turn myself back around. And spin the camera around again. And yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. At what point do you recommend companies bring folks like you hacking things in the development process? Probably at the start, just or even halfway through. Just like do like little tests, along incremental tests. There's nothing wrong with getting someone to test it once. I think not doing a test at all is probably worse than just starting with one test. And usually guys get pretty excited when they get devices. So like if you send the device that's worth a certain amount of money, such as like a Dodge Ram, for example. It's a Dodge Ram. So yeah, if you like that in itself is a torrent of information. Yeah, apologies for that. Yeah, it's just something to think about. I've got a voting machine here as well. I want to show you some cool stuff. It's a voting machine as well. It's a bit dusty. I haven't actually had a look at that yet. I've been too busy with all the other stuff I've been hacking. So how can farmers protect themselves from bad actors? I don't think they can really. They just have to worry about incremental little things, keeping themselves secure, being able to cut off from the, being able to go backwards to older technology. And then our operating systems inherently more or less secure. Technically, yes. Technically, no. I would say it depends. Like for example, OpenSSL vulnerability might affect everyone. BSD had some problems a couple of weeks or a couple of months ago, whereas Debian, whatever, might have problems at this certain stage of the time. time of the year or whatever. A torrent of information. Thanks. And then you are a hacking god. Do you think that if you had companies like John, you had an open source ecosystem versus their closed lockdown? The mayhem is probably subjective. I would say that I do cause kind of headaches for them, but my mayhem is kind of a little bit different to their mayhem. But yeah, if they, I mean, technically they do a lot of open source in there. I'm well aware of that. They know that as well. They know that I can, they know that there's a lot of open source software in there, and they actually don't own that software. They have their own software in there, but they, you know, it's GPL. So it's kind of a little thing to talk about at some stage that, you know, it's not my discussion really. But yes, there are opportunities to do open source. You know, it might come to a stage where an open source device might take over the entire market, you know, like if it's that well supported, you know, if there's enough, and I do a lot of open source coding. So I know what it's like to get a whole community to build a software program together. We're talking on protocols that have been built by open source. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, Sick, can you tell me a little bit about your background? How did you get to where you are today?
I'd say, yeah, just, I don't know, I grew up, I wasn't necessarily, I was pretty smart, but I wasn't necessarily on the right path. I think, you know, just made some silly mistakes, I think, and then ended up getting pretty good at computers. And I think I taught myself really, just sort of like, you know, just being interested in things like this and learning from other people, learning from experience. You know, like the whole thing that the whole talk was all about me just going into all the mistakes that I made along the way. And I made a lot of mistakes, like, you know, wrecking the chip, you know, scratches everywhere. Yeah, this is, have a look at that. This is all busted up. It's like, I literally, there's so much damage to this board. Like, I don't even know how to explain it. That whole Qualcomm thing is missing there. That whole, like, this, where is it? It's back to front for me. What am I doing? This part, yeah, this is all missing. It's all, yeah, it's all screwed up, but it still works. Yeah, the Doom one's obviously flagship. That's, yeah, probably the funniest thing ever, but yeah. Cool.
Thank you very much for a really illuminating presentation. I had no idea about the number of ransomware attacks that are happening recently and how complex and sophisticated this whole OEM world is. So pretty amazing.
Just on that note,
new world.
There is a couple of Twitter accounts you can follow called ransomware alerts and things that they actually, because a lot of ransomware now is of the model where they don't encrypt your files because, one, it's too difficult because they've got really big things. They'll just take all of your data and then they'll say, look, we're just going to publish your data if you don't give us money. And then they don't even encrypt it. And a lot of people are paying because they don't want the data to go out. And then if you go to those websites, you can actually download the company's data. So you can go on there and download AirAsia's, I don't think AirAsia's up there, but I saw one the other day. It was like, you can go in there and download some construction company, all of their invoices, all of their employee records, passports, you know, employment agreements, just absolute absurd amount. They will take everything and hold it for ransom. So different types of ransom. Yeah. Very, very cunning way of doing it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for this presentation. So much appreciated that you've taken the time to visit with us today. We're going to take.
I just want to say, if anyone wants to ask any questions or they have any follow-up information they can go to my website, sick.codes, or just find me on LinkedIn, Sick Codes, or email info@sick.codes. I'll write it in the chat. I haven't got my keyboard.
Great.
Yeah. No worries. I'll let you go.
Okay, so thank you again.
Thanks for having me.